We've looked at offers, and then we've also looked at the different ways that that offer can come off the table, revocation, rejection, lapse. Now we're going to look at what happens with acceptance. If we have acceptance, we actually have agreement, and the first element we need for a contract. But it's not that simple. We just need to understand what acceptance is and what some of the rules are behind acceptance. Let's get into it. So acceptance occurs when the offeree, remember that's the person who the offer is made to, when the offeree indicates by words or actions, so it can be conduct, that they're willing to immediately enter into a legally enforceable contract with the offeror on the terms offered. They've said to accept the offer. Notice if they change the key terms, that is a counteroffer. And we know the rule from that from our last video that that's a rejection of the offer. Okay, but as long as they don't change the terms and they say, yes, we're ready to enter this contract, they've accepted. Once the offeree accepts, an agreement has been reached, right? We've had that meeting of minds. An offeree can't change their mind after accepting unless the offeror agrees to it, right? But generally you can't change your mind. And this is a match for the rule that the offeror can't revoke after acceptance. Okay, so we're trying to hold both the parties to the same standard. So once you've accepted, you're in the deal. There are three key conditions for acceptance. The acceptance must be unqualified, because remember, if the acceptance is qualified, that means there's a big condition attached. Then it means either there's no meeting of minds, okay, because they haven't actually said they're willing to immediately enter it, or it's a counteroffer, right? It could be considered a counteroffer if they've changed something, if they qualify their acceptance in some way. The second thing is the acceptance must be communicated. Okay, so the offeror must know that it's been accepted. And three, the acceptance must be made in reliance on the offer. We'll come to what that means, but if you accept something without knowing about the offer, you really haven't had a meeting of minds. So the first rule, agreement, acceptance must be unqualified. Okay, if an acceptance is qualified, it's likely a modification of the offer, and so is really a counteroffer. That means the original offer is rejected, and instead the offeree is making a new offer. And we know from Hyde and Wrench that the offeree can't later change their mind to accept the original offer. So let's move on to the other rules around acceptance, and we're going to look at an old case, Feldhaus and Bindley. So Feldhaus offers to buy a horse from his nephew, and he makes this statement: if I hear no more about the offer, I will consider the horse mine for, it was £30 in those days, but let's say $30. Okay. His nephew didn't reply to that statement, but at the time he was selling a whole lot of his stuff, including these horses, and he had an auctioneer, Bindley. Okay, so Bindley was the auctioneer who was selling a whole lot of stuff for Feldhaus's nephew. And the nephew said to Bindley, don't sell the horse. Okay, so you can kind of see that in the nephew's head, he thinks he's going to sell it to his uncle, Feldhaus, but he hasn't told Feldhaus. Okay. B, Bindley accidentally sells the horse. Okay. Now, Feldhaus is now mad because he wants the horse, right? And so he tries to sue Bindley because Feldhaus is saying, you didn't sell my nephew's horse, you sold my horse. So the legal issue is whether there was a contract, right? Whether there was a contract here. So did Feldhaus legally own the horse? And what the court said here was no, Feldhaus didn't own the horse. Why? Look, even though the nephew had intended the horse to be sold to his uncle, he hadn't communicated any acceptance of his uncle's offer. So this is an offer. Now, one of the problems that we have with this issue of silence, right? So the rule is that silence or a failure to respond does not constitute acceptance. Why not? Well, imagine in the post you receive a book and it says, if I hear no more from you, I will consider that you have bought this book for $30, right? If I don't hear from you by next Monday. And then next Monday, that company could send you a bill, right? But you haven't asked for the book, you haven't done anything. It'd be very unreasonable to expect you to respond to that, and companies would just start sending things everywhere to try and increase their revenue. So that's why this rule comes into being. Acceptance must be communicated. That's the key rule of Feldhaus and Bindley. Our second case here is the Crown against Clark. Now, this involved the Western Australian government, the Crown, and they offered a reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of people who were associated with killing 2 police officers. So Clark gets arrested as part of the investigation into these murders and makes a statement which leads to the conviction of some other people. Okay, so Clark is kind of a pretty dodgy character because they bring him in thinking he's involved. He says something which leads to the arrest of the 2 people who actually did murder the police officers. So then he finds out about this reward and says, well, I should get the reward because I gave the information that led to the to the murderers being found. The court held in this case that Clark was not entitled to the reward. Okay, why? Well, when he made the statement that led to the arrest, he was doing that in order to be released, in order to prove that he didn't do it. He didn't do it because of the reward. In fact, he didn't even know about the reward. Okay, so the legal principle out of this case is that acceptance must be made in response to or in reliance on the offer. If you don't know about the offer, you can't accept it. There's actually no meeting of minds, is a different way to think about it. Okay, so acceptance must be made in reliance of the offer. So let's go over these again. Acceptance is not complete until the offeree communicates the acceptance. The offeror cannot insist that a failure to respond is acceptance. Okay, you can't insist that. But note, the offeree can, right? So you could say, I offer to sell you my horse, and if I said, as the offeree, if you hear no more from me by Friday, I consider my acceptance valid, right? In that case, we have a meeting of minds. I will buy it unless you hear from me by Friday. That would be a contract. That's the offeree having silence, not the offeror. If the offeror specified a specific mode of acceptance, like it must be in writing, then the acceptance is not valid unless it's communicated in that manner, okay, or an alternative manner that's just as prompt. So if I said in writing and you emailed me, that's probably good because it's still written by email, maybe just not in a letter. If no method of acceptance is indicated by the offeror, then the custom of the trade, okay, what's usual or reasonable, okay? So things must be communicated in a reasonable manner. The acceptance must be communicated in a reasonable manner. Okay, acceptance must be made in reliance of the offer. Okay, only the offeree can accept the offer. If I offer to sell you my house for, $500,000, a person down the street can't accept that offer. My offer is made to you. Only the offeree can accept. There's no meeting of minds because I'm only offering it to you. Acceptance must be made in reliance of the offer, the Crown against Clark. A person can't, really what we're saying is a person can't accept something they weren't offered. There's no meeting of minds in that particular case. Just to reiterate, acceptance must be communicated, it must be unqualified, and it must be made in reliance of the offer in the manner specified or a better manner. Whew. Okay, so now where we're at, we've got that first condition of agreement. We know whether to work out whether we have agreement. Next, we need to look at intent.